Hi, it's Anne Marie, and I'm here this morning with Hilary Linton of Riverdale Mediation. Welcome, Hilary. And we're just going to have a bit of a conversation about your business. So, can you tell me a little bit about when you got started?
Sure. So I was a family lawyer for quite a few years. And then in 2000, more or less, I got tired, I guess, of doing traditional legal work and started a business 2001, offering some different ways for people who are experiencing separation and divorce to work out settlements other than going to court.
So, what motivates you to do what you do? What keeps you going in terms of your business?
Well, having had some years of experience helping people work through conflict in the court system, I had a good idea of what worked for people and their children in that context and what didn't. So having that framework was really helpful in allowing me to develop something creatively that meets the real needs of people going through separation and divorce. So I think what motivates me and keeps me going is the sense that I'm doing something helpful. I'm offering a service that's useful. It's something that clients really appreciate. It's something that fits in well with the court system. It's not a competitor to the court system. I have a lot of respect, actually, for the role of the courts in family law disputes. But this is something that aligns really nicely and for the right couples is a really a great solution, to help them at a very difficult time in their lives. So I think that plus the sense that I'm offering something that really allows separating couples to focus on their children, to focus on what's really important to them, and to get to a better place in a way that saves them a lot of money and stress and distress. I think all of those things motivate me because I can see that it works. The other thing I'll say is I do a lot of teaching, as you know. I teach people to become mediators and arbitrators. Right. And I love that work too, because it allows me to empower new professionals to offer this service. So all of those things keep me going.
That's great. So can you tell me a bit what it was like in your industry when you first started and, what's changed since then?
Well, yeah, I mean, a lot's changed, right? When I started, which was over 20 years ago, there weren't very many lawyers doing what I decided to do, right? Mediation, the whole field of dispute resolution, particularly in family law, was not very well developed. So I was a bit of a pioneer, but I really had the benefit of the support and training from the real pioneers. So I was really lucky because there were many who came ahead of me who had done really great work in this field. And then I was able to draw on that and go from there. I can say at the time that I was a partner in a law firm. And at the time I quit my law partnership. And I literally had other lawyers coming up to me, kind of touching my arm and saying, "Oh, I hope it's going to work out for you." There was a real sense that what I was doing was a little bit crazy. It's turned out to be, I was just lucky in terms of my timing, because it turned out that this is a very popular service. We're busy. Clients really like this. So I think what's changed is kind of the degree of acceptance of, what's called alternative dispute resolution within the legal culture. There's a much higher degree of acceptance now that this actually is a good thing. It's not some wacky, hold hands around the campfire kind of thing. This is actually a very focused, legally defined negotiation process. And the legal community, I think, has really come to accept it and even embrace it because most of the people I train now are lawyers.
So that's a change for sure. So what would you say clients like about the service? No, I get it. They're having a marriage breakdown. Likely there's not much to like, but in terms of feedback you get from clients, what do they like about using mediation?
think what they like is that mediation in particular. I mean, we do other things besides mediation, right? We also here at Riverdale do arbitration and parenting coordination, which we can talk about if you like, because those are more adjudicative, right? Decision making, kind of private court kind of processes. But mediation is something clients really like because it empowers them to resolve their own issues in a way that it works for them, and it focuses on the things that are important to them. So the mediation process starts with supporting the person, right? Each person individually, and then supporting the family. As mediators, we really listen to people, right? We care about them. We care about them as human beings. We care about them as parents. We care about them as former partners. We care about their children, and that caring ethic comes through in every step of the mediation process. So it's a very supportive and empowering process of, self-determination. Clients like that a lot because nobody's telling them what to do. It's not for everybody. Not everybody is able to kind of bargain at an even table. We do a lot of training and a lot of work to try and accommodate those sorts of power imbalances, but for most people that works. So I think that's the thing that people like most about it. I think the thing that people next like about it is it suits their timelines. Right. You don't have to accommodate a court schedule or even a lawyer's schedule, right? We have a lot more flexibility in how we can serve people. And I think the third thing, and this is a biggie, is it saves people a ton of money. Just a ton of money. We have people coming to us in mediation, and they have spent tens of thousands and sometimes insanely hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees. And they get everything resolved in a mediation process, for a couple $1,000 each, right? Or less sometimes. So, the financial savings are really significant in most cases. I would say those are the things people like most about it.
So you named your business Riverdale Mediation. Do you live in the Riverdale area?
I live in the beach area. Okay. So when I was starting up my practice, I didn't want to be too close to home. But I also didn't want to go downtown where I'd spent most of my career. So I found I had colleagues actually practicing, or friends, some really good friends practicing law in a house on the Danforth. And so I joined them and started up in Riverdale, and hence the name Riverdale Mediation.
Wow, that's amazing. So what do you like about your neighborhood? What are your favorite go-to places in your neighborhood?
Oh, there's so many. I've been here for over 30 years, and I still do a lot of work in the neighborhood. Probably my favorite go-to place is the lake. I can, it's not a short walk, but I can walk from my house to the lake. Sure. And especially during the pandemic, that boardwalk area was just a serene kind of little oasis. Right? It was so beautiful. And I really valued the lake more than ever before. In terms of, there's so many great places in the beach and along the Danforth to go and eat. Obviously, we've always loved, just exploring all the range of places that you can get delicious food along the Danforth. Also, though, I'll say probably my personal favorite has always been Little India. I love going there and exploring the food and the culture and the community. And I also love, when you ask what do I like about the neighborhood, one of the things I like is the change. I'm a lover of change. And so I love the way our community is changing. I love the way our community has hung on to parts of its tradition, but I also love how it's a really kind of diverse community, one that's, I think, quite open to all kinds of change that's driven by, diverse needs and interests and goals and ways of being and living and eating. And so there's there's everything to love about the East End of Toronto, and I wouldn't be anywhere else.
Have you experienced a lot of significant change? I mean, you've been here 30 years, so you must have seen some change, particularly along the Danforth and Gerrard.
Well, I mean, even just today, I'm looking at how, the bike lanes along the Danforth are being extended, and you can curse that, but to me, it's like fabulous, positive change, right? I mean, we just have to embrace it, and so that the change that I've seen has just kind of been the kind of growth that's really exciting, right? The kind of growth that really exposes you to things that are new and different, and I love that. So I mean, I'm not the kind of person to compare the way things are to the way things were. I'm kind of a very forward looking person. And so I just take it as it comes. And what I love is that things don't stand still, right? What I love is that although, I mean, many of my favorite places, I look at restaurants along the beach, and probably, one of the first restaurants I ever went to in the beach was the Honeybee. With my kids when they were really little, it was their favorite restaurant. Well, the Honeybee's still there. And so I love that these kinds of landmarks exist and we can cherish them. And then I also just love all the new stuff that's coming in and making our lives so interesting.
That's amazing. So what challenges do you face in your business at this point?
One of the biggest challenges I would say is continuing to provide the quality of service that I'm really committed to in an efficient way for people. And particularly given the adaptation that we've had to go through to kind of accommodate the pandemic.
Right.
Many people are really tech savvy, but many are not. And so trying to offer service to people who really need support and help with online service delivery has been challenging. Adapting my own staff, adapting my own processes, and kind of adapting my own ways of living and working and offering service. It's been a very substantial psychic and practical change. And now we're kind of having to change back, right? Or partially change back. So, I mean, that has been, the most immediate change. But I think more broadly, the biggest challenge I would say are field faces. The whole family law field faces is it's lack of diversity, right? I mean, if you look at the clients that we serve, one of the things that I do is I also provide court connected services in Toronto. So through a government contract, I am a service provider in the family courts at 47 Shepherd and 311 Jarvis downtown, and also at the Superior Court at 361 University. Right. And the clientele that we serve, both in the court connected world, but also privately, is wildly diverse, and our industry is not. So I would say that's a huge failing on our part. And there's, so one of the longer term goals that I've had as a trainer and a person who brings new people into this industry is to really find ways to make sort of my business and my business model and what I teach more accessible to people who aren't like me, accessible in every way. So that's something I'm quite committed to. And I see that as one of the, I think, challenges any kind of privileged professional has. Sure. It's coming to terms, we're kind of coming up with a mechanism for being open to re-examining all their own assumptions and ways of seeing things and expectations, so that they can grow perhaps in ways they never intended or never even realized were going to be necessary. And I think that's a challenge that the whole family law field faces. So I would say
it's quite interesting to hear you say that, because one of the things that I really have liked in my transition to real estate is it is incredibly diverse and it's quite an accessible career. And people who are new to the country pick it up quite quickly. Inside of 7 or 8 months, and can start into working with their own community because they've got the language skills and now they've got the knowledge, and really making a success. So it's an interesting perspective. It doesn't take an awful lot of training in addition to, just the desire to help people.
That's fascinating to hear. And yeah, so I can learn from you perhaps, right? Maybe
I really do think in some ways, I mean, it is about the profession, but it's also just about how accessible it is. Mm-hmm. So that's an important sort of thing to think about, I guess, as you're developing new training methods and modules. So you've been in this neighborhood 30 years, and why do you think it's important that people shop or do their business locally? Like what does that add?
Well, I mean, it's what being a part of a community means, right? Is supporting your community, and whether it's a faith community or whether it's a geographic community, it's important, right? And I mean, to me, community can be whatever you make it, right?
Right.
So, when I look, for example, at one of my favorite new businesses in the East End, it's an Indigenous arts market on the Danforth near Pape, right? It's actually where I got this necklace. And I mean, it's a fabulous, fabulous business. And I've very deliberately supported it. And it doesn't need my support. It's just an amazing place. The work, the artistry is mind-blowing. But it's a local business, and it's also an Indigenous business. So there's so many layers of why we support our local community in all ways. It's not just businesses. I mean, one of my favorite places in the East End is Community Center 55.
Yeah.
Places that offer services to the public locally, you should support them because they make your community a better place, and they enrich your life. They're there. You want them to be there. You don't want them to go away, right? So
no, it's true. It's very true.
Right. I mean, if I look at how, I started my career really in Riverdale, and it was fabulous. I mean, it as a business person offering services in the community, a lot of my business originally came from local couples who saw the name walking by the sign on the street, or right. I wrote a column. I mean, another one of my very favorite places is Beach Metro News. I wrote a legal column for Beach Metro News for many, many years, and writing that column brought me a lot of business to my local Riverdale business. So all of this sort of supports the theory that if you embed yourself and you support your community is going to support you, and it also is going to leave you with great feelings and great memories, because it leads to friendships. It leads to lifelong connections with people who, and if you believe in helping people and actually making your little corner of the world just a little bit better, that's the best place to start. So yeah, so many.
That's great. So you run your business and you live in the community. What do you do in your spare time?
I love to get out of the city and get out into the country. So I spend a lot of time in the winter. I teach cross-country skiing. So wow. I spend my winter teaching and cross-country skiing a lot. And I spend as much time as I can in the summer out camping. So kayak trips, canoe trips, backpacking trips. As long as
we actually had to reschedule because of a kayak trip. So I understand that for sure. Yeah. So what's the best way for customers to decide whether mediation is good for them? So clients, they're thinking maybe they don't want to go to court. They want to settle their.
That is the most important question you can ask, right, in my field. And I think one of the things that happens when something new comes along, right, is that the people who are selling it, people like me, may be inclined to oversell. You have to be careful when you find something you love, and I do love mediation, to not become such a true believer, to think that it's the right thing for everybody. So your question is the right one, right? How do people figure out if it's right for them? And I say this because the courts offer so much, right? The courts offer many accessible and free services that many people really need and benefit from. And it's why, as a mediator, I like to encourage people to use those resources if they can, and then use whatever other resources, mediation or otherwise, that they can use in conjunction. To me, it's not an either or. So I would say, talk to people about mediation, read about it. Certainly our website, Riverdale Mediation, has a lot of information about mediation and also other, offshoots, arbitration, parenting coordination, all these private services that can be very useful and helpful to people. Read up about them, speak to people, make a phone call or send an email and ask questions, because, there are some cases where parties shouldn't even try to mediate, right? If there is some coercive controlling violence, if there are patterns of coercion and control, in the relationship, that's not likely to be a good case for consensual dispute resolution, right? That may be the kind of case that needs a different process. So you really you do want to spend time asking questions. And I would say this goes for anybody thinking of hiring, say, an arbitrator or a parenting coordinator.
So why don't you tell me a little bit more about how those services are different than mediation?
Well, and these are such great questions, because a lot of people, and even a lot of lawyers, don't always appreciate the differences. So mediation is a really low risk process, right? It's a really great opportunity to see if you can work something out with the other person. It's confidential. It's low cost. You share the costs, you share the fees of the mediator. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't really, put you back in any way, other than you've spent some time and a bit of money. And because of that, mediation is quite a safe process. So I always recommend that almost everybody consider mediation, or at least go for an intake meeting. Mediators start with intake meetings. And if you're in the court, if you have a court case, by the way, you can actually get a free intake meeting. And free mediation if your case is suitable. So I would recommend almost everybody who's separating or divorcing to consider an intake meeting with a mediator. And in that intake meeting, the mediator will explore with each person separately whether mediation can help them and their family. And if it can, then they'll have a confidential negotiation and try and come up with an agreement. In most cases, we do. Right? In most cases, people are able to settle parenting plans, child support, spousal support, property division, everything. Right? It's a good way in many cases. Sometimes people want they don't trust that they'll be able to reach an agreement in mediation, and they want something more. So sometimes we do something called mediation arbitration. And that's where, if the mediation doesn't lead to an agreement, we then become a decision maker. And we change hats completely. And we become, our role becomes very similar to the role of a judge. And we will hear evidence, and we will make a binding decision about the matters that the couple wasn't able to settle in the mediation. So it's similar, except it then it's similar, but it's not, because if the mediation fails, there is then an off ramp to arbitration, and it's a private court, basically. So, that is a great process for people who are prepared to work with a single person to try and resolve. And if they can't resolve, have a decision made by that person. It's got pros and cons, right? It's not for everybody. It can be expensive, and you're paying your judge, whereas the judges in the courts, of course, are free. But the advantage is you can control the timing, you can design the process. Again, you have a lot of control over how it's going to go, when it's going to happen, how much it's going to cost. So they're fundamentally different processes. And again, if you're considering these processes, or if your lawyer's recommending it, or your family or friends are recommending it, you still should have that intake meeting with somebody who can discuss the process with you and can assess whether you and your spouse are good candidates for that particular process. So that's the nice thing about everything that we do. And I will say as well, one of the challenges in my field is it's unregulated. Even though many of us are lawyers or many of us are social workers, we are not regulated by the Law Society or by the College of Social Workers as mediators. So it's a
bit surprising, I would think, like to the public, that there's no regulation that anybody could be a mediator or say they were a mediator.
It's really true. It's really true. And that's something that, if you're considering mediation, you want to pay attention to the qualifications of the person who's offering the service. There are organizations that provide voluntary regulation or voluntary accreditation. So organizations like the Family Dispute Resolution Institute of Ontario, the Ontario Association of Family Mediation. These organizations offer a lot of support and standardization of best practices. So you do want your mediator or your arbitrator to be certified by one of these organizations, but it's voluntary. That and that's a really good point. A lot of people don't realize that it's an unregulated industry, and so again, this intake meeting is so important, and anybody considering mediation should make sure that they're working with a mediator who is certified by one of these organizations. Even if they're a lawyer or a social worker, they should be certified, and they should offer, they'll charge you for it, but they should offer you an intake meeting, a confidential intake meeting, to assess whether your case is suitable for mediation or not.
So that's really the question to ask in the beginning, right? So what are your qualifications, and can I have an intake meeting to find out if this process is the right process for me?
Correct. And also to get a really clear understanding of confidentiality. Right? Mediators sign contracts with their clients, and those contracts are really important to read and understand, because that is what establishes the confidentiality. That's a very important protection for people using mediation. I know of one case where a mediator, this was a lawyer mediator,
did mediation. Take the sun off my face here.
Okay. There we go. Yeah, I know one
still there.
It's okay. It looks good. I know of one lawyer mediator who did a whole mediation with their clients without getting them to sign an agreement to mediate. And the clients thought it was a confidential process, but the court ended up deciding that it wasn't, because there was no signed agreement. So very, very important to make sure you sign an agreement with your mediator, and that that should be the mediator's job. They should make sure you get the agreement signed.
That's great. So anything else you think we should know about Riverdale at this point? I know there's so much more, but that you think people watching this video should know about your service?
I can't really think of it.
That's all good.
I think we've talked about everything.
Okay. So I have one more question for you. So if you were meeting a young person who wanted to start their own business at this point, what advice would you give them?
Well, actually, I'm going to back up a bit. I am going to answer your previous question. The one thing I would say to people is, if you like this field, if you're interested in it, consider taking the training. We train a lot of people. Many of them are family lawyers, but many of them are school teachers, or they may be a social worker, or they may have worked with children or youth. They've been in the family law world in some way, and they're interested in becoming mediators. That is the one thing about our business that's really fun. It's really changing. And we get very good reviews. I think people really appreciate the training because it's quite and interesting and hands-on, very practical. What advice would I give a young person? I wouldn't give advice to a young person. I don't feel I'm qualified to. Why? Because things have changed so much. When you look at how young people run their businesses today, market their businesses today. They're doing stuff I'm not doing, right? I'm not even on Instagram, right? So I just think I'm not even qualified to tell a young person, what they should do. I take inspiration from them. I really am excited by the changes and by what young people are doing. And, my only advice would be keep doing it, because there's lots of people like me who can't keep up with you.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. I mean, thank you so much, Hilary. I really, really appreciate it. And I loved having the conversation with you. Love learning more about Riverdale, and I look forward to hopefully not using your service.
All right.